what we hope to do tonight is go back through a bit of an overview about what the whole farm requirements are for this year, and how they sort of impact crofters. And then we've got a panel of people then to take some questions. So our panel this evening, so we've got Iain Carmichael joining us again from Scottish Government. Thanks, Iain, for coming along again. And I'll try to not fire too many questions your way, but can't promise. And then we also have 3 crofters. So we've got Russell Smith, Rachel Challoner, and Liz Phillips, who have all been having a go at some of the elements, and are happy to answer some questions from a crofter's perspective. So hopefully that will be useful in itself. But before we sort of get stuck into questions and answers, Celia is going to give us a wee overview. And then once she's done that, we'll deal with, some of you did put in pre-submitted questions, so we'll pick up some of them if they haven't been covered by what Celia says. And then in the meantime, if you think of questions as we go, please do just drop them in the chat, and then what we'll do is I'll sort of pick them up at the end, and we'll get the appropriate people to answer them. Okay, so hopefully that sort of gives you a feel for where we're going. Just a wee bit of background if you haven't joined us before in these. So the whole farm plan obviously is a new requirement from this year. It's been discussed at length in various groups, including the ARIOB, which is the sort of oversight board for the new agricultural support stuff. And there was a whole farm plan steering group, which we were members of. And I think that we're probably now at a fairly pragmatic solution for this first year of it. So hopefully the requirements are not too onerous for the first year, because obviously it's quite a big change for everybody to get used to. But I think we're still certainly doing some work behind the scenes to make sure that as we go through subsequent years, that the requirements do not become too onerous for crofters to do. So sort of in policy terms, we're still having conversations, and we've actually got a meeting with the Minister at the beginning of April to discuss some of our sort of concerns as we look longer term on this. But for this year, we certainly feel like people can give things a go, and hopefully that's what we can show you some of tonight and talk through tonight, and then pick up any questions that you have. So I will hand over to Celia.
So this is just a whistle-stop tour through something which has taken us 4 webinars already to talk about, so just bear with me, it's quite brief, but hopefully questions will get answered through the course of the evening. The first thing to say about the whole farm plan is that it's not a plan. It's actually 5 options of plans or audits to complete. They're relevant to your croft. They will all need to be completed by 2028 if they're relevant to your croft. By your SAF 2025, you will need to have completed 2 of the relevant audits or plans. If you claim basic payments and greening payments, this doesn't apply unless you're within that system. So the 5 plans are a carbon audit, a biodiversity audit, a soil analysis, an animal health and welfare plan, an integrated pest management plan. I'm sure a lot of you will know this already, but some of you may not, so I'm just going to go through it. The ones in blue, they need to have been carried out within the 5-year period leading to May 2025, and they need to be renewed or reviewed every 5 years. So if you submit 2 of those for May 2025, you then don't need to resubmit until May 2030. If you're completing an animal health and welfare plan or an integrated pest management plan, they need to be renewed annually. You can read that yourselves. This is so you know which plans are relevant to you. So if you keep livestock, you will need to complete an animal health and welfare plan. All claimants will need to complete a biodiversity audit and a carbon audit. If you use pesticides or other plant protection products, you'll need to complete an integrated pest management plan. If you claim Region 1 land that receives applications of artificial fertilizers and or organic manures, not including seaweed, you'll need to complete a soil analysis. So it's important to remember to choose plans that are relevant to your business. So you can't just tick 2 boxes this year by choosing a soil analysis unless that's relevant to your business. They'll need to be, you can do a soil analysis, but it won't count as one of your 2 for this year. You may already have these plans in place through a quality assurance scheme. Just make sure it's up to date. The only one that requires submission is a biodiversity audit. The others, you just tick a box on your SAF, but obviously you would need to keep them available for inspection. So it's mandatory for anyone who has cattle, sheep, goats, deer, alpaca, llama, pigs, or more than 350 poultry to complete an animal health and welfare plan. If you're already a member of QMS or another assurance scheme, what you have to submit for that is actually over and above what you need for the whole farm plan. If you don't have that, there's on the QMS website, there's a template you can use. We've actually been trialing our SCF, our own template, with a couple of crofters. There are vet practices that are completing animal health and welfare plans. There will be a charge for that. The only charge I've heard is £35, but I imagine it varies from practice to practice. And there are also online tools like the Scottish Animal Health Planning System. Vet signature is not required for your animal health and welfare plan, but you should have had a visit from the vet within the past 12 months. There are some dispensations within crofting areas, bearing in mind the difficulty in accessing vets in places. So, for example, if your vet saw your flock at a township gathering, or if you're a member of a stock club. And as you can see, if you have 2 cows or less, or 13 breeding ewes or less, the vet doesn't need to have been to your croft if you have taken an animal to see the vet. The biodiversity audit is mandatory for anyone who claims BPS unless you only claim for seasonal land. And essentially it's a habitat map rather than a detailed biodiversity audit. There are a number of ways of completing it. If you're on the LIPIS system, you can complete the habitat layer of your maps on there. You can provide ARPID with a habitat map and identification key. So you can actually ask ARPID to send you printed versions of your habitat maps, or you can print them off yourself and you can colour them in and provide a key. You can also just provide ARPID with a list of your field identifiers and then name the primary habitat. And then for any of those on the ARPID website, there are a list of habitats that you can use as a means of identification. And it's always the most dominant habitat in any field. And we've also got a document that we can share, which describes the habitats that you would be choosing from. And then there's also the option of using the Nature Scots Farm Biodiversity Scotland app, which is meant to be available this month, but I've not had an update on that. The carbon audit is mandatory for every croft business that claims basic payment. And there are 2 free tools that you can use. Well, there are more than that, but these are the 2 that are most relevant for crofts. So there's AgriCalc, and they can give you a 3-month trial period, which gives you long enough to complete the audit, and then it's valid for 5 years. There's also Farm Carbon Calculator. That's also free to use, and there's not a limit on that. And we've actually got a webinar on YouTube, which has demonstrations of how you can use these tools and a bit more information about them. And then once you've completed one, you have to add in recommendations for what you could change on your croft, if anything. And you can just make these up from the tool or from your own research, or if you're paying an agent, that would come from the agent. Anyone who completed the carbon audit in 2019 for the beef efficiency scheme would need to complete another one. Integrated pest management plan is mandatory if you use any plant protection products for land that you're claiming for. I understand that the tool that offered by the Plant Health Centre is really easy to use. This is what I've understood from people who have used it. And then if you've got a plan under the Scottish Quality Crop SOPA or Soil Association, then they also meet the requirement of the whole farm plan. Soil analysis is only a mandatory audit if you claim for Region 1 land that receives applications of artificial fertilizers and or organic manures, not including seaweed. And you need to measure pH, potash, phosphorus and soil carbon levels. If you're doing this yourself, you can carry out the soil sampling yourself, and there are instructions as to how to do that on various YouTube videos or on the ARPID website. Your soil analysis must be carried out by a registered laboratory. The results must include pH level, phosphate, potash, and carbon as a minimum requirement. You might want to get more than this, but that's the minimum required for the whole farm plan. And you need to retain a record of the soil analysis results and any action that you have taken as a result of the soil analysis. So that's a real whistle-stop tour through all the 5 plans. The key points are that you just need to complete the relevant plans. So by 2028, you may not need 5 plans depending on your business and the land that you claim for. And in theory, it's possible to carry out all the relevant plans without paying an advisor using the online tools that are available. And one thing that I think is a concern for a lot of people is that they're already doing everything they can in terms of biodiversity or in terms of carbon emissions. And it is not required. We've been assured it's not required to demonstrate improvement year on year. And finally, preparation for sustainable farming funding has reopened, and you can use this for animal health plans, for carbon audits, and for soil sampling. If you do this, what you get from those will actually take you above and beyond the requirements for the whole farm plan. And so you don't have to do this, but people find it useful for their own purposes. And finally, looking ahead, whole farm plan 2026 requirements will be set out in summer 25. By 2028, nutrient management plans may be included as a whole farm plan requirement. By 2028, all businesses will need to have all relevant plans and audits in place, but remember, just the ones that are relevant to your croft. And in future years, complying with the whole farm plan could also be required for other funding, for example, CAGs. So for this year, it's just if you're claiming basic payment. Going forward, we don't know when this may change, but going forward, it might be for other funding that it's required.
All right, thank you, Celia. As you said, a quick fire tour, but if anybody hasn't been on our previous webinars where we go into the animal health and welfare plan, biodiversity audit, and the carbon audit in detail, then you can look back at those if your questions aren't answered tonight. So I wonder if I'll just quickly, Iain, can I just sort of quickly come to you just to I guess check that overview was still correct and nothing else has changed since we sort of started this process, and maybe come back to there was a comment in the chat there, Iain, I don't know if you've seen it, about something that must have been discussed on a previous webinar about vet visits. So
yeah. So yeah, I think more or less nothing had changed and everything's great. The Nature Scott app, sorry, just an update. It is going through further piloting again this year. So I think that'll be the update you'll maybe hear, is if you want to participate in the pilot exercise this year, Nature Scott will want to hear from you, and you can volunteer to be a part of that pilot. And on the point on the vet visit, it won't be in the main guidance, but it's within a Q&A within the guidance. So yes, we have covered that points off, and that was to do with being able to demonstrate that not actual visit, but a telephone conversation or online discussion had taken place with your vet practice in the croft and island situations. So that is in place, yes.
Okay, so and I'm just understanding with the Nature Scott Biodiversity app, then, so if you've taken part in the pilot, that does fulfill the requirement.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
It's just that it's not going to be available en masse to everybody.
Exactly, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So we'll get into other questions now. Either put it in the chat, or if you know how to raise your hand on Zoom, please do. We did have some questions submitted in advance, so I might just start with a couple of them while people are having a think. So one of them, and I guess this is probably a good question just to kind of understand some of the thinking of government. Was will we still need a whole farm plan even for a small woodland croft, whose only aim is to benefit the environment and the biodiversity and reduce CO2? So I guess the first part of answering that question is only if that croft is claiming basic payments, because otherwise the whole farm plan's irrelevant for the moment. Iain, is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
But would you like to make any other comment on that question
Yeah.
about woodland croft?
So it depends on what your other activities are on the croft. So if we're assuming you're claiming BPS, then one thing you'll need is your biodiversity audit, habitat map, a carbon audit, and then depending on your other activities, you may or may not require the integrated pest management plan if you use plant protection products on the woodland, etc. If you've got animals, obviously you would need an animal health and welfare plan and soil analysis. If it's potentially reaching one land, then and you're applying fertilizers to that woodland, then potentially that. So it all depends on your situation, and if you refer to that very good diagram Celia had in her presentation that I won't take any credit for, but that'll explain if you what would apply to you in that situation, or in any situation, but in that particular woodland croft situation.
So I'll just continue through the pre-submit questions. So somebody had sort of said, do the plans require review and updating, and what is the deadline date for the first 3 submissions they've put? But it's the first 2 submissions, so they go in with your SAF this year, and hopefully Celia did sort of cover in the presentation there that this is where so the carbon audit, the biodiversity audit, and the soil analysis are all 5 yearly. So you do it once, you don't have to do it again for 5 years. And the pest management plan and the animal health and welfare plan need to be renewed annually. So just to restate those.
So it's renewed or reviewed annually, basically. So especially your animal health and welfare plan, you'll probably set new targets or look at your targets from last year, how you achieved them, and what to do if you want to progress next on. So that's spot on.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I'm just going to make a general point, which I obviously should have realised earlier, but it's just with Celia going through it there, that for us, the only things that apply are the animal health plan, which we've done anyway through QMS, and the biodiversity audit, and the carbon audit. The other 2 don't apply because we don't use pesticides and we don't use artificial fertilizers. And I suspect there's a lot of crofts who are going to be in that position. So I was thinking, which 2 am I going to do? Am I going to do the carbon audit or this? Well, actually, I don't really have that much choice. So if I do, I've done the biodiversity audit, and if I do a carbon audit next year, then that's it, done.
And I think that's the key, Russell, is to say it does sound daunting, but if depending on your situation, you might not have to. All 5 definitely won't apply to you, and it's they are 2, 3 maximum, and if you're fortunate, 2 of them might not need to be done for another 5 years once you do them once. But what we would do is just encourage you to just look at them and take some information, or take the information from them to look to ways you can improve your business, not just do them because you have to get your BPS. It's that the aim is that the information from them will help you make changes to your croft business, save you money, make you more efficient, and reduce some emissions.
Christine, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Donna. Yes, thanks. A question, well, probably for Russell or for Iain. I did my carbon footprint using the free 3 months from Agricult, but it's got non-validated report through every page. Is that acceptable? Because I've written to them twice now to ask them to sell me their first year programme, but no one's got back to me about it.
Thanks, Christine. That's a really good question. Yes, that's acceptable. So what that through it means, so if you paid for an advisor to do it, what happens is that the AgriCalc team themselves validate what the third agent's done for you, so that your carbon is validated. But doing it yourself, just the way you've done it, and having that report, that's sufficient for the whole farm.
So it's okay if I just do I need to upload that when I'm doing my return?
No. Just keep a hold of it, and that's it. When you submit your single application form, just tick the box to say you've done your carbon audit and the date you did it. That's all.
Right. Well, it's all on the doc. There's about 15 or 16 pages of it once I did it all. But it actually, I would recommend it to anyone, to be honest, because it was free, and I did the whole of last year because I had all the answers to hand anyway. So it was actually quite easy to do. And I'm not saying I'm clever at it, but it was, if you just take your time and you have all your answers there, you get your report. But it's just that I was a bit concerned with having the non-validated report through every page, that you wouldn't accept it.
No, perfectly fine.
Fine, that's great. Thanks, Ian. That's one of my worries off.
Thanks, Christine.
Thanks, Christine, and good to hear that you found it okay to do, because I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Until we all sort of start trying to do this, it's hard to know what to expect.
There is quite a lot of things you've got to answer, though, Donna. You've got to sort of have. Well, I had all my accounts beside me and everything, and I just went through it page by page, and it was all right. It took a wee while, but it was fine.
Okay, just picking up on a couple of the questions in the chat as well. So I'll pick up on one from Catherine there, because it mentions, whilst we're on the subject of carbon. So she was asking, do you use common grazing land in the carbon calculator or for the biodiversity mapping?
For your biodiversity, no, you can exclude your common grazing shares. For your carbon calculator, then yes, you should. And so I'm thinking of AgriCalc here. So what it does is ask you for the areas of each type of land you use, or your crofters access to, and the percentage of, or the number of months it's used. So say for your common grazing share, if you're only using it, during the summer, you'll work that out in a percentage of the year. So it's too late in the night to try and tell you what a 1 month is in a percent of the year. But you just do that and you work it in, because the other thing it's asking for is inputs. So it'll ask for feed, fertilizer, etc., that you use, which you may be using on the commons as well as on your own croft. So just include your common grazing share within your carbon audit calculation, but you don't need to bother with it for the biodiversity audit. I hope that within ARPID we will cover off the biodiversity element of common grazings, just because it'd be difficult to work out who would be responsible for doing the common grazings if there wasn't a committee in place, or if the committee themselves aren't claiming BPS and it's not completed, a bit, it impacts on your individual claims. So we'll look to do the habitat mapping on common grazings for you.
So a couple other questions from the chat. So Kathleen has just written land number instead of QMS in relation to the animal health plan signed by the vet. Not sure I understand that question. Kathleen, are you able to come on and
Yeah, I am. Just to clarify, it's a land number. Instead of being in QMS, we receive a land number, which is the registration number of the vets, in order to sell our, say, if you had fat stock, you're selling to a butcher or going through an abattoir, that you have that number instead of being in QMS, as QMS is quite an expensive thing, scheme, whatever. I mean, we're so small, it wouldn't make sense for us to be in QMS, to be honest, financially, because the margins are so small.
So this is the attestation number.
I
You're saying
assume
it's for
so.
selling through, yeah.
It's called land. That's all
Yeah.
I know it by.
So you still need your own animal health and welfare plan, and then your evidence of a vet involvement during the year. You know, or have some evidence of vet involvement during the year, whether that's being, like we said, you know, a telephone consultation, taking a sheep to the vet, or the vet being on the croft or in the township and you took sheep to them or cattle to them. So you just have to have that evidence, and that would be fine.
There's a few different. So Iain's been off and checked the FAQs about the vet visit, but it's he says it's not been updated yet. But I guess a couple of comments, Iain, and I suppose this was one of the concerns in terms of the onward effect of introducing some of these requirements. So Iain says that his vet's constantly cancelling a visit due to work pressures and vet emergencies. So it's sort of proving difficult to get that element of it done. He said, "Can I use this recording as proof to tick the box?" And somebody else has said that their vet charged £154 for their animal health plan. They tried to do it themselves, but the vet wouldn't accept the plan and wanted to do it for them instead. So got a few week sort of issues, I guess, starting to show there in terms of, of what's that.
Yeah. And that, you know, so when we had the discussions, during the working group, these were one of the kind of amendments we made to the minimum standards was to make it more flexible in how you demonstrated the vet involvement. So it wasn't requiring that vet to actually sign off on the animal health and welfare plan, which QMS will require, but it was that lower level, and that's why we introduced all those different options of being able to demonstrate involvement. So it's a shame that private vet practices are taking that approach. I'm just there's not much else I can say, unfortunately, about that. But we can, we'll make it clearer, and I'll pick up if that hasn't been included in the guidance. What I've said previously, I'll make sure it is in the Q&A and it's published first thing tomorrow morning. But yeah, we will do all we can to make it clear that you don't need to hopefully pay for a signature of it. It's just having that conversation with a vet.
Yeah, so it's maybe a communications thing, isn't it? That maybe some of the changes haven't quite filtered out so that everyone has the same understanding as things have moved along.
Just to say, I downloaded the QMS template as opposed to signing up to QMS and completed it. And I actually found it really quite helpful. And I spoke to my vet today and asked him if I emailed it to him to have a look at. Would there be a charge? And he said there would be an admin charge of between £60 and £100. And, I don't really want to be vet bashing, because I think they are going to suddenly get a huge increase in their workload with crofters and farmers suddenly, feeling the need to seek advice and whatnot. So I'm not quite sure how it's all going to pan out, but I think we need to think of it from the vet's point of view as well. They're already busy people, and they've suddenly got, 80 crofters, 200 crofters all saying, "Can you have a look at this?" So saying you need to get vet advice, how is that going to be found in the vet's time? I find doing the QMS helpful, and it wasn't onerous. And I think it's a pretty good plan, because I just, I spent the time doing a bit of reading and so forth. So, yeah.
Okay. Russell?
Just continuing the theme about vets and plans and things, there obviously is a great deal of variation over the country, and it's going to depend on your individual vets and the relationship you have with them. But there's a couple of things I would say. One is that, I've been in QMS for a while, so I've developed the health plan over the last 15, 20 years, and I've got my own template, which they accept, because they can't really not, because I've done it in a way which is useful for me, and there is no prescribed method. There are templates or suggestions, but they shouldn't be rejecting ones because they don't like the format. The I mean, because you'll be able to see that, but I've actually started off. It's by weeks through the year, and everything we just got sheep. So what I do for them, and as the years have gone on, I've added in, the type of feed and the quantities of feed, the medicines we use and the dosage. That's all in there. But my guiding principle, when I started off, it was so as a reminder for me of what I should be doing at any time of the year. But it's sort of morphed into something which is, if I'm not here, then someone else can take it and they can at least run the croft in the way it is. So the guiding principle of the health plan, the animal management plan, is for someone else to come in, not knowing anything about it, read the thing, and manage the place. The other point I would make on it is that having gone through the plan with the vet, as this is part of QMS, the vet then fills in several sheets of suggestions. And that was an hour spent, an hour and a half spent with the vet. And, so some good stuff has come out of it. So it's part of it's a consultancy. Okay, you're going to pay for it, but you're paying for the consultancy. And for us, it's worth it because every time we do it, I learn something new, which is, the point of the farm plans.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Russell. Is actually if you want to see if there are things that you could be improving or thinking about, then these are the tools that will help you do it. Absolutely. Just a couple more things then on the animal health and welfare plan while we're on that. So Iain has posted, Iain Carmichael has posted in the chat, but for those that maybe can't see the chat, it says that the whole farm plan animal health and welfare guidance says plans do not have to be signed off by a vet. However, veterinary involvement in the holding is important and is expected as part of best practice. So hopefully that makes absolutely clear what's expected for the whole farm plan part. But obviously, yes, you would be wanting to speak to your vet at other times. And just another quick question, Iain, and I don't know if this has come up before. But
sorry, Dawn, I just while we're still talking about farm vets and things, that my understanding is that if you want antibiotics, then you have to have had a vet visit in the previous 12 months. Therefore, you've got to have a vet's visit anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but I guess the key thing is if people are worrying about trying to get that ahead of the SAF deadline, it's clear that they don't have to have it there for ahead of the SAF deadline. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Or having to pay an additional fee to have that, so you don't have to pay that fee. You don't have to get it signed off. So don't pay a fee to your vet for the whole farm plan. QMS is probably different, that you will need to sign off.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other question that somebody's put is, if I have other people's stock, this is from Murdy, other people's stock on the croft on a regular basis, how do I reflect this in an animal health plan? So this is if you've got a combination, I guess, Murdy, of your own and somebody else's.
Yeah, so I suppose if you've got management responsibility for them, it will determine how you do it. So if you are responsible for dosing them, jagging them, lambing them, doing whatever you do, on your animal health and welfare plan, you treat them probably the same, and carry out the main way. Otherwise, it'll be part of your biosecurity consideration for your croft, how you will safeguard your own sheep, your own cattle, whatever it is, from other stock being present on the croft.
Murdy's giving you the thumbs up, so I think that answered his question fine. Okay, Rachel, I wondered whether you want to come in on the animal health and welfare plan before we move on, because you have a quite a unique situation. Do you want to explain to everybody what you've done?
Thanks, Donna, and hello everyone. So I'm Rachel. I live in Fair Isle, which is up in Shetland. We're a tiny island halfway between Orkney and Shetland, classed as the most remote inhabited island in the UK. So I'm in a similar situation to Russell in that I don't need to do a pest plan, and I don't need to do a soil analysis. So the ones that are relevant for me are the animal health and welfare plan because I have sheep. The carbon audits and the biodiversity audit. With the animal health and welfare plan, and this was actually something I raised in one of the early sessions that the SCF put on to do with the vet visits, is the fact that vets don't come here. I know I'm not alone in that. I know there are bound to be other places, other islands where you can't get vets to come out. Vets just don't come here. They're very good, Shetland vets, the practices there, in that we can phone them and they'll do like a phone consultation with us. But obviously we have no way of meeting that requirement to have a vet come out to the croft, once every year. It just physically won't ever happen. And obviously we've no way of getting sheep or whatever out to vets either, without spending hundreds of pounds. So in the past, what I've always done is just kind of phone the vets if I've had a problem. But since kind of getting a bit more up to speed with the requirements for the animal health and welfare plan, I've now started, if I have a problem, I'm just emailing them as an initial point of contact, because then at least I've got a paper trail that I can prove, it might end up in a phone consultation, but at least I've got that kind of bit of paperwork that I can show to prove, oh yes, I have had conversations with the vet. It's not just me saying, oh, I had a phone call with them, which you can't really prove it took place. The vets obviously understand the situation we're in with the animal health and welfare plan, and they've sort of said they're happy to, if should we ever need their confirmation that yes, a conversation has taken place, they'll absolutely confirm it. But I just wanted to kind of say, I know I can't be the only person in that situation, and so on my own animal health and welfare plan, I've just put some notes about how I contact the vets, in what circumstances would I contact them, that kind of thing, and hopefully that kind of covers all the boxes I'm meant to tick in that respect.
Thanks, Rachel. Maybe some people are almost quite surprised about how little information is required for the habitat mapping this year, and they had chosen to ask ARPID to provide a map, to complete the information, but they were a little bit surprised to receive what they got was an A4 size copy of their IACS map, which was quite small scale, sort of really to put any meaningful information on. And I guess, overall, I think it's fair to say that they were surprised because they didn't really feel that the information they were going to provide was of any much use at all to anybody. So I wonder maybe if you could just talk a little bit, Iain, about some of the thinking. I mean, I know that we'll have done this before on the one focus on biodiversity, but just for people who are new tonight.
Yeah. So when we're looking at it, we found that probably the majority of farmers and crofters had no involvement in biodiversity auditing, habitat mapping prior to the whole farm plan coming in. The only people that really had been involved was people that were engaged in some of our agri-environment schemes or engaged closely with Nature Scott. So what we were trying to do was, and it's a cliche, was bring everyone on the journey. So small kind of first steps in the ladder on a very basic habitat map, i.e. basic identification of single habitats within a field as a minimum, multiple if you can, etc. So that's why, when we developed that criteria, it was with that in mind to say we're bringing people on the journey. What we didn't want to do was to say, well, you need a biodiversity audit, and the first thing you do is pick up the phone to your local agent and get charged a ridiculous amount of money for something that you could do yourself. So we're trying not to scare you, but take you on that journey of first step in the ladder. Because remember, going forward, half your support money is going to be environmentally related. So that's what it is. In terms of the detail in the map, yes, I totally accept an A4 scale, especially if you go number of fields. That's just not big enough, and it's certainly not big enough for our land mapping team to map it. So our guidance is, if you're looking for your map, contact the land mapping team, and they'll supply you with your map. You went to happen. So there's maybe what we need to do is just to update our staff to make sure that to ask what's the reason you're requesting the map, and to at least supply it as an A3. So if you go to the land mapping team, for example, they can supply anything from A4 up to A0. So you could paper your front room with the size of map they can provide you. So that was what we were to do. The other option would be if it's very straightforward and there's only 1 or 2 habitats within your croft or per field, is just to give us that list of habitats and your field numbers so that they can map them. But I certainly, I agree that the A4 just isn't big enough, and I'll make sure our offices are at least asking if you've not made them aware of the requirement, and make sure they give it to you on a bigger scale. But certainly anything bigger than A3, our land mapping team would be able to send you those out.
Okay, thanks, Iain. Russell, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thanks. Just following up on that, Iain. What's the sort of turnaround time now for the land management team? Because I tried to do it online, and I gave up after an hour and a half. So I just ended up printing off the maps, drawing the stuff on it, and sending it off to them. That's what is 4 weeks what you would expect.
So I know is with the run up to the SAF window opening, and updates to aerial photography, etc., they focus a lot of their time to make sure people's maps are right. So I can't say, but what I can do, Russell, is if you want to send me a private message, I can chase them up. But it's
just, it's sent in.
Yeah, I'll double check they've got it. But I can't indicate how long it'll take them to map, just because it just depends on the work they've got. And I know they are getting ready for making sure everyone's maps are correct in time for SAF.
Yeah, it's my fault for not doing it earlier on in the year. There must be a lot of people now who are sending stuff in.
So the encouraging, when we were thinking about the whole farm plan, we probably thought the biodiversity habitat map was going to be the one that was going to be left till the end. But I'm hoping to be pleasantly surprised that it's actually the other way around, that it's one that people find that it's one of the more easier ones to complete themselves, and are encouraged to do it early rather than later.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and somebody's just put a question in the chat there about confirming that habitats are by FID and not by location within the FID. I think that probably depends on the size.
By FID. Yeah, FID, and if you've got any on your boundary, so likes of a dry stone dike or a hedge or anything, and you should include them as well. But it is by FID, by field.
Mm-hmm. Liz or Rachel, have either of you had a go at this?
I was just going to say, I was sort of one of the people that trialed the Nature Scott biodiversity app, and I found, I'm not particularly technologically competent. I'm very, I'd say, kind of average. So I, new things I'm a bit wary of, but actually I found that it really quite sort of intuitive. The help section on it was, and I know it's not available at the moment to everyone, but it's definitely, I'd recommend it to folk in future, especially in terms of mapping the different habitats on your areas. There's the help section has sort of videos that explain how to do it, but you can really kind of blow an area up and sort of draw in the exact bits if you've got kind of boggy bits or sort of different areas within one particular field. It's quite easy to do on the app. And I found in terms of answering the questions about the different habitats, I did find it very, very sort of straightforward and surprisingly simple to complete. So I'd just definitely recommend that to folk. If you get an option to do that, then do it.
Okay. Liz?
Yeah, I would completely echo what Rachel's saying, and I was wanting to ask Iain whether the app will be available again before the SAF window opens. Because having been at the webinar about going through the mapping, that just looked completely bamboozling to me. I'm not surprised Russell gave up after an hour and a half, but the app was incredibly straightforward, and I am not tech savvy either.
I can't say, Liz, to be honest with you, if it'll be available or not. I've not had an update from Nature Scott, but if I find out differently, I'll and if Celia's not found out, I'll let her know what I hear.
Yeah, because you said, Iain, I think at the start that you thought they were going to be running more piloting, but I guess the question is, can new people sign up to that if they haven't already done it or not?
Yeah, I'm not just quite sure of the details. That's it. I'm afraid. Sorry.
Another question that's come up in the chat there about the biodiversity thing is whether an EECS management map counts for the biodiversity audit.
Good. Yes. Thanks. Sorry, it saves me answering. I was typing the answer, but it keeps jumping off. So it does. However, what you will need to do is the chance are your EECS map doesn't cover the whole croft. It'll only cover the areas that you were managing under EECS. So you would just need to update it with the other areas of the croft that haven't been habitat mapped. Depends when you joined EECS. It may, if it was in the last couple of years, the land mapping team may have already captured your EECS map onto LIPIS. So it will just be a case of just filling in the blank space of areas that aren't under EECS management.
Okay. And somebody asked about seasonal land. So obviously we've confirmed already that you don't have to do biodiversity audit on common grazings, but some people will have seasonal lets of croft of in-by land. So
yeah, likewise. So if you don't have it on a permanent basis, if if it's a unofficial sublet, etc., then just treat it as seasonal land and you don't need to do it. But if it's it's an official sublet, registered to the commission, you have for more than a year at a time, then you would need to carry it out, and that would include as well as a biodiversity audit. That would also be the same for soil analysis.
Okay. And just a more general thing. So I guess people are starting to try and imagine in their head when they come to do the SAF this year what it will look like. So there was a question earlier in the chat about, could we see what the form will look like? And there's another one now about when they come to, is there a facility on the SAF form to fill the habitat map, or do we upload the map as part of the application? So there's kind of two things in there, isn't there? One is what does the whole farm plan bit of the SAF application this year look like? And then the habitat maps, we'll cover that separately because there's different ways to do that. So
I'm trying furiously to find an email that might have it in it, so I can show you the example, or at least if I can't find it now, I will send it to Celia so you can see. But basically, and I'll just try and talk it through my head. When you go on your online SAF and it asks you what schemes you're applying for, and you tick that you're clearing BPS, then automatically underneath it will appear the 5 whole farm plans, and you'll just put a tick against the ones that you've completed. And as soon as you put a tick in it, it'll ask you to enter a date of when you had your audit and plan completed. And that's as simple as that. In terms of your habitat map, what you need to do, so you don't upload it with your SAF. You need to send it to the land mapping team. So there's information in the guidance how to do that, either by sending them the map by email, or there's a postal address there as well. So, yeah,
so ideally, you want to do that before you submit the SAF itself, or
exactly, yeah. So what you're ticking on the SAF is to say what you've completed by the 15th of May. So yeah, if you can get it submitted in, that'd be great.
So I wonder then if we just touch a little bit more on the carbon audit. So again, we heard earlier from somebody who had done it. Has any of our panel done the carbon audit?
This was one I was terrified of because I didn't really understand it. And so I have to say the SCF webinar about the carbon audit was super helpful. And I think folk can access the recording of that. Yeah,
they can. Yeah.
So definitely watch that. It answered so many of my questions on it. I actually used the farm carbon toolkit, I think it's called, which is a completely free one. And because of my sort of setup here, so I just keep my sheep for basically their fleeces. I get their fleeces spun into wool and sell the wool. So I'm not actively breeding. I don't sell any sheep. So a lot of kind of my carbon audit, I don't have a vehicle, there's no machinery, there's nothing goes on the land, so there's more blank bits in my carbon audit than there are bits filled in. So it took me a while, purely because there are so many kind of different pages in the menu to go through, but I did find it fairly straightforward. There are a few bits I did sort of have to look up, but I found it quite sort of straightforward. The farm carbon toolkit, tool, I found that very sort of straightforward. It was easy to follow. You can put notes in as well, so you're not just completely bound by what's there on the screen, and the feedback it gives you at the end in terms of whether it's a pie chart or bar chart or percentages. It's very easy to understand what it's actually telling you, although that might just be because my setup is a very, very basic setup. So I guess the more inputs you're putting in, it could become more complicated, but for a free tool, I definitely recommend that one.
Good. And so we've had one of each then. So Christine, it was AgriCalc that you used. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's two. Anyone got any questions on the carbon audit? Because I think that is the one that I think you're right. It does scare a lot of people when they sort of first hear about it. Russell.
Yeah, not so much about being scared of it, but for Christine and Rachel and anyone else who's done it, did it actually throw up anything that you did not know? And have you changed anything based on doing it? This comes back to thinking, well, is it actually useful? Or am I just assuming that I know everything, whereas in fact I don't, and it might be like the vets, and oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I think sort of for me it did throw up things that I didn't know. I'm not from a farming background. I've only been running my croft for 10 years, so there are lots of things that were new to me. So things like fencing, fence posts, fencing wire, that all comes into what you can put in the carbon audit, which I would never have thought of. But also I wouldn't say I'm going to sort of change anything directly, because I have so few inputs that there's not really anything that I can change, apart from I guess the number of sheep that I had. If I lowered that, then my carbon score would go down, but that's not something I'm going to do. But it's definitely been useful to see kind of what other factors may affect the carbon audit, the score that I wasn't aware of beforehand.
Christine, what about yourself?
I don't think there's anything I would change either. I think I agree with that lady, but it threw up a few things that I wasn't aware of with the questions. But I'm very basic as well. Like I mean, I have a tractor, but it doesn't come out very often, so I'm very low on carbon anyway. So, and I don't do fertilizers or anything. So a lot of it was like the lady said. Mine was blank as well. But yeah, it was useful to do. I think I've done the soil sample. In fact, that's only, the results only came back today. So I just did a glance just before I came on to this webinar. I think there's maybe one or two things I might change with what I've seen with the soil sample. So I would do more changes with that than I've done with the carbon. So it's just, but I've still got to do my biodiversity. So I'm not sure if I'm going to get that done in time, but I'm going to try that one as well next. But I did have a look at it, but it was a wee bit daunting. Like what Russell said, I think I would have been hours. I was hours reading the instructions and never did anything. But no, the carbon, I think maybe I would just stay the same. But with the results that I've looked for the soil, I may do something to improve that a little bit.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so there's a couple other questions, probably for Iain about carbon audits again, just sort of clarifying things. So, Liz says it's been mentioned that a township can complete a carbon audit as a group for both common grazings and the in-by. Is this correct?
Yes, it is correct, and I've triple checked that it already is in the Q&A. So I had a mind slip with some stuff. So yes, that is definitely is acceptable.
Okay, so that's quite a good way.
And likewise, and I've probably said already, likewise, if you have a township level QMS membership, that also will be the same for the animal health, because you'll be treated as one animal health welfare plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I was just picking up on a couple of sort of comments that Catherine made, but I think they probably pull up certainly some of the questions that I saw when we did the carbon audit specific webinar, and it's about what you need to include and what you don't need to include. So Catherine, for instance, has said, my carbon audit would be low, no machinery, but she hires when needed for harvest planting. So I guess that's a question: is should you be including hire machinery, or are you only recording your own stuff?
So, and I'm just trying to think what the carbon calculator does. So it asks for, I think it's fuel usage. So it asks for the amount of diesel maybe you burn. So if you supply a diesel to whoever's doing the work, then that's fine. You should know it. But if not, it's probably making an estimate of the amount of fuel that's been burnt doing whatever they need to do. So what the carbon audit, a lot of people get confused, going, no, it's about carbon footprints, it's this and that. No, it's not. It's more about, it's an efficiency calculation. So it's basically how efficient you're running your farm and croft business. So yes, it will give you a carbon footprint, and a lot of my colleagues, as well, get hung up. I know it's about this carbon footprint that farmers and crofters have in this. I keep trying to explain to them it's not. Carbon audit is for your benefit, not for anybody else's benefit, because it's giving you that kind of look from inputted data that you've provided, what your efficiency is, and gives you areas that you're emitting the most emissions from, so that you can focus on that to make any improvements to reduce them.
Mm-hmm. And there's a question here, Iain, similar to a question we had about the animal health and welfare plan. So Carolyn says that we have a friend's cattle grazing on our land for a few months over the summer. Will they count on our carbon audit?
So I think it's like the land, you'll just put in you should include them. But I think if it does ask for them, and I'm just trying to work this out, if it does ask for the period of time they're there, then you just put in the number of months. So what the carbon calculator is trying to do for livestock particularly is work out how much dung they're producing or slurry when they're housed. So if you've got them during the summer, I think it'll ask for the period of housing or something. I can't remember what in particular it is. So the chances are, even if you are including those cattle numbers, that the period of, or the amount of bedding or whatever it is asking for, will be zero, because if you're not overwintering them and not inside, they won't be there to count. But the carbon audit should determine what it is, how many months it's asking for the animals to be on the hold.
Okay. And then someone said same for overwintering sheep on other land. So Kathleen, so you don't have them on your own land, they go to somebody else's for the winter. Is that I'm assuming
Yeah, I
that's
think
what she means. And then in terms of what you do with that for the carbon audit. Yeah.
I think there was a question, sorry, Donna, about ELFAS and the whole farm plan. So for 2025, it's only impacting on if you're claiming BPS. In future years, and I think it was in Celia's presentation, more schemes are likely to require compliance with the whole farm plan. I'm not going to say it's 26, but if I was thinking, I would say maybe come 2028, it may encompass more schemes, but decisions have yet to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I think we're sort of that was a question. You're right, but I think Kathy's question was about if you haven't got the sheep on your land all year because they overwinter somewhere else for the carbon audit, would you do the same as what you just explained about the cows?
Oh yeah. You just do the reverse. You would just indicate him if it's asking for a period length of time on the croft, you would just reduce it from 12 down to say 9 months.
Okay. And then that's grand. You picked up the question about ELFAS. I mean, I think one thing just generally to say about ELFAS is there hasn't really been much detail yet come out about how ELFAS will be handled under the new support system. So that's something that we're waiting to see generally what that will look like. I'm sure that will be coming sometime soon, and maybe Iain knows when.
No, if I knew the answer to that, I'd probably not be sitting here because I won the lottery last weekend.
Okay. And then there's a question again from Iain, and I suppose it's just about comms. This is the first time I've heard this rumor, Iain. Somebody had heard that whole farm plan was almost like an opt-in option, so that if you opted in, you got an extra £1,000 in year 1 and £500 in year 2. But obviously that's not the case. But it just maybe highlights that communication around what is expected and what it means is maybe not been as good as it could have been from the government.
Yeah, it's difficult. So we did that direct mailing to explain it to everybody. We've done like these events for yourself. We've done events in the Scottish, or we've put articles in the Scottish Farmer, etc. And it's very difficult. Yes, I agree. It's getting that message out. We thought direct messaging or direct mailing individuals might help, but if they're not being read or fully understood, then that is a problem for us to do. And we should never assume that because we've done some that we've done enough. But we get criticised both ways. You're telling us you're telling us the same message too often, and or in some cases not enough.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on the carbon audit side of things? I don't think so. So the couple that we haven't touched on at all yet, and I guess it's because they're maybe not relevant in a lot of cases, but we did have a pre-submitted question about the soil analysis, just asking what do we need to do once soil analysis has been completed. But my understanding, Iain, is that really the results are for yourself to look at how you might change things going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like all these things that we're asking you to do. It's for your croft benefit, your pocket. So your soil analysis, the results of that will tell you what the nutrients are in your soil, what it needs, what it doesn't need, and you'll be able. It might need lime, it might need you to cut down on phosphorus, or might need to increase in phosphorus. But whatever it does, it will give you the information to allow you to grow whatever you're growing, grass, barley, oats, whatever you're growing, more efficiently, and get a better yield.
Mm-hmm. Just out of interest, has anyone on the call done the soil analysis? Christine, you said you had. Yeah, and anyone else?
And it was very straightforward. I just took a garden scoop, did a zigzag across the croft, and one side one side is sand because it's mainly sand because near the shore, and the other side is more fertile. But it took it in a bag, took it to the place in Inverness, SRUC, and paid. I think it's £27, so it doesn't cost a lot. I've just received the invoice, and it was easy to do, and I've got the results, which are kind of what I expected, but quite useful.
Okay, thanks, Rena.
Only a question about pesticides.
All right.
You class Roundup and kind of spot spraying of weeds use of a pesticide?
Well, that's a fair question. Iain?
Yeah, yes. So any chemical, herbicide or pesticide, we would require them to get pest management plan. So, it is if grass if you use the plant health site to do it, you'll choose whether it's a grassland situation or an arable, and it's just a series of questions, it's a questionnaire that gives you your kind of results. So it's not the hardest one to complete.
All right, Murdy.
Yeah, I finally managed to unmute there. Sorry. Yeah, have done soil analysis. And my question really was, how often do you have to do it? How long is it valid for once you've done it?
Murdy, for the whole farm plan, it's 5 years. So if you've done it, you won't need to do it again for another 5 years. An agronomist or somebody that's an expert and wants to say fertilizer will tell you to do it more often, as depending on if you're changing crops over, etc. But for the whole farm plan, it is 5 years.
My question about the soil analysis is, it talks about a soil analysis. Yet it can't be different from many crofts where we've got some reasonably good grass fields, we've got some reseeded fields up the hill, we've got some peat, we've got some rush pasture, there's a whole range of stuff. So you can't you have to do a soil analysis almost by field by field.
Yes, it's your region one land, and it would be on a field by field basis. That's right, and it's only the fields that get applications of fertilizer done.
Yeah. So it only applies to region 1 ground.
It only applies to region 1 payment fields.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's what they told me.
Yeah, which is why for quite a lot of folk this might not be relevant at all, depending on where you are in the country. But sounds like a simple one, and at the minute would be covered under PSF funding as well. But it does, I think, understanding is that it goes into a lot more detail than what's needed for the whole farm plan. But if you're particularly interested in it, then
I don't think it's. I'm sorry. I think they're both the same.
Are they?
And the only thing I'm thinking of is that connection with you having to do the carbon audit to then allow you to claim for the soil analysis. I think they're combined, but I'm 99% sure of that. I'm not just fully 100% sure, but that's the only issue would be that you would need to do the paid carbon audit potentially to then claim the soil analysis.
Going back to the pre-submitted questions that we had, so are worth, I think, covering off just as in terms of a summary. So one of them was, what can we do at this late stage to comply with the rules? And I guess the advice there is it's not too late. I mean, all of these things are still achievable within the time, because as long as they're done before the 15th of May, then you would tick the box on your SAF and say that you've done them, and that's all that's required. And the final question that we had, but hopefully we've given a flavour of it, but maybe if the person who asked it is on the call feels we haven't, they could say was that they just wanted to know how simple or detailed the plans needs to be for a croft. And obviously each of the plans are quite different, but hopefully we've given enough of an idea there. But if anybody's still got any questions about that before we sort of finish up, then please do stick it in the chat or put your hand up. Hopefully the biodiversity of it audit we've sort of clarified is fairly straightforward. Carbon audit, we've heard it kind of depends on your situation, but it certainly feels like don't be daunted by the number of questions that's asked, because it might be that a lot of them you can just leave blank, and I suppose that's quite a key thing to remember as you're going through it. Animal health and welfare plan, I think we've sort of got a fairly good flavour of what's needed there. It's really just the plan of what you're doing, but written down rather than in your head, which I guess a lot of us carry around all the time. And then the soil analysis is obviously not a plan, it's just something that you do and send away. So is there any other kind of burning questions that anybody's got, given what we've sort of covered tonight? Oh, somebody's put slight confusion. Kathleen, slight confusion, carbon audit, common grazings. So if you're doing your individual croft, you don't include you wouldn't include the common grazings, but you could, if you were working together as a group with the rest of the grazings, do the carbon audit. Is that right?
So if you're doing a township one, then that'll cover the full common grazing plus everybody's individual croft. If you're not doing a township one and you're doing your individual one, you'll just use the details for the land that you have of your croft and your share of the common grazing.
It really is just on exactly that subject, because I asked the question about whether it could be done as a whole group of crofters. I've just been kind of going through it in my head. So we're on in South Skye. We've got a township which has got a lot of unworked crofts, and the ones that are worked, majority of them are more elderly people who do claim basic farm payment. So it would seem like a great idea to do it as a joint group. But I'm just in my head, I'm wondering, you've got one crofter who's maybe got a tractor, you've got another one who's up and down all the time cutting rushes with his flail mower, somebody else who's got no machinery at all. How do you actually create a township carbon audit?
It just takes account of everything that everybody does. So you're right. So it'll take a combined fuel usage for the township. So combined fertilizer use, combined feed, animal feed that's bought in, straw, etc., and just create that one total for the current carbon audit for the area.
Would then that be divided by the number of crofts, or how would it?
So remember it's an efficiency calculation. So it's not about what your individual cut. So it'll just look at it to say, okay, so the township as a group should look at that results of that carbon audit to decide what, if any, changes can be made to make the township more efficient. So it's just that looking at that, saying, if you want to have your own carbon footprint and understand how your croft, your efficiency of your own croft is, then do your own.
And the other very important point that you've made, Iain, in the chat, is that this year there are no penalties. No one's going to be marking your plans for how well you've completed them or whether you've captured every single little detail. It's more about encouraging folk just to give it a go and say you've done it. But yeah, if you miss something off your carbon audit, for instance, nobody's going to come and hammer you over the head and say you shouldn't have done that.
So these are all for your benefit. So it's the information you put in is the information you'll use to hopefully make changes or identify things you can do. So, but we won't be, so there will be no penalties in 25, and we certainly won't be, ARPID won't be asking to see, just like what Donna said, see your homework and give you a mark and create you problems if you've identified the wrong habitat or something like that. So don't worry about that.
That is probably a good point to end the session on, unless there is any kind of final burning question from anybody. as we say, hopefully if this was your first time tonight venturing into this stuff, then please take a look back at the previous sessions where we've gone into some of these things in a lot more detail. Particularly maybe if you're looking to have a go at it, it might just help guide you through it a little bit. They're all available on our YouTube channel, and there'll be links on our Facebook from when we sort of published them out. Please do have a go and see if you can meet your requirements for this year. And then obviously we'll continue to work on this as plans develop for next year and we start to understand more about what if any changes come along, and we'll do some sessions. Can I thank Iain? Iain, you've supported us through all of these sessions so far, and that's very much appreciated. It's reassuring to have a member of Scottish Government here hearing people's questions and concerns, but hopefully that helps you develop, as we say, better guidance and things like that going forward. So thanks very much for coming and answering all our questions. And tonight also thanks to Liz and Russell and Rachel for sharing their experience, and Christine, because you ended up doing the same as well. So thanks very much for that. But again, I think it's reassuring just for each of you to hear other crofters that are going through it too, because that's where it becomes real and understandable. So so please do speak to your neighbours, I guess, and probably you can all help each other have a go at these. But yeah, and thank everybody else for giving up some of your time on an evening to join us. We hope it was worth your while and that you got something from the session. But yeah, thank you all very much.